The story of Jacob wrestling with the angel is one of the most fascinating and enigmatic narratives in the Bible. This intriguing passage reveals much about the nature of faith, spiritual struggle, and personal transformation. Set at a critical moment in Jacob's journey, this passage invites us to reflect on the challenges we face in our own life's journey. Jacob, the cunning biblical patriarch, had endured many trials in his life. From his childhood, he had struggled to claim his place in the family, using wiles and strategies to obtain his father Isaac's blessing and his brother Esau's birthright. This relentless pursuit of recognition and power, however, had estranged him from God and his own integrity. Now, after years of exile, Jacob prepares to reunite with his brother, fearing for his life. It is in this moment of great uncertainty and vulnerability that Jacob is confronted by a mysterious opponent, whom some interpret as an angel sent by God. This nocturnal struggle becomes a turning point in Jacob's life, challenging him to face his own weaknesses and seek reconciliation with his Creator. During the struggle, Jacob refuses to give up, demonstrating a determination and resilience that surprise his opponent. This scene evokes the image of someone who clings desperately to God, fighting for a blessing, for a transformation. Jacob knows that his life depends on this struggle, for it represents his last chance at reconciliation with his brother and with himself. Throughout the battle, Jacob and his mysterious opponent engage in a physical and spiritual confrontation, each testing the strength of the other. This symbolic struggle represents the journey of every human being in search of their identity and their connection to the divine. Jacob, who had previously stood out for his cunning and manipulation, now finds himself facing a force that challenges his very understanding of the world. As the struggle intensifies, Jacob begins to realize that his opponent is not a mere mortal, but a manifestation of God himself. This revelation confronts him with his own humanity and leads him to question his priorities, his values, and his relationship with the sacred. In this crucial moment, Jacob is forced to face his own shadows, his flaws, and his deepest aspirations. The struggle becomes a metaphor for the spiritual journey of every human being who must confront their own demons and limitations in order to achieve transformation. Jacob, who had previously stood out for his cunning and manipulation, now finds himself facing a force that challenges his very understanding of the world. Throughout the battle, Jacob and his divine opponent exchange words laden with meaning. The mysterious adversary questions Jacob about his name, a question that reveals much about the identity and nature of the patriarch. Jacob, in turn, refuses to reveal his name, demonstrating his determination to maintain his autonomy and his struggle for the blessing. This exchange of words between Jacob and his divine opponent is full of symbolism and profound insights into the nature of faith, spiritual struggle, and personal transformation. Each word spoken carries significant weight, challenging Jacob to confront his own truths and surrender to the will of God. Finally, after hours of intense struggle, Jacob is wounded in the hip, a mark that will accompany him for the rest of his life. This physical wound represents a spiritual transformation, a moment of surrender and acceptance. Jacob understands that his struggle is not only against his opponent, but against his own limitations and his resistance to surrendering completely to God. Jacob's hip wound symbolizes the humility and vulnerability that are necessary to achieve true transformation. It represents the acceptance that, no matter how much we struggle, we are finite beings dependent on divine grace. This understanding leads Jacob to a new perspective on his journey and his relationship with God. Even wounded, Jacob refuses to give up the struggle. His determination to obtain the blessing of his opponent is unshakable, demonstrating his thirst for reconciliation and a deeper connection with the divine. This scene evokes the image of someone who clings desperately to God, even in the face of adversity. Jacob's persistence is surprising, as it reveals a willpower that goes beyond the physical. His struggle becomes a metaphor for the spiritual journey of every human being who must confront their own fears, limitations, and resistances to achieve transformation. Finally, Jacob's divine opponent blesses him, changing his name from Jacob to Israel, which means he who struggles with God. This name change represents a profound transformation in Jacob's identity, marking the beginning of a new era in his life. The blessing granted by the divine opponent is an act of grace and mercy, recognizing Jacob's struggle and determination. This blessing represents the reward for effort and perseverance, demonstrating that spiritual transformation does not come without a cost, but rather through a journey of confrontation and surrender. After receiving the blessing, Jacob finally reconciles with his brother Esau, an encounter charged with emotion and meaning. This reconciliation represents the healing of an old wound, an act of forgiveness and restoration of family relationships. The reconciliation between Jacob and Esau symbolizes the importance of facing and overcoming the conflicts and divisions that estrange us from our loved ones. It reminds us that spiritual transformation is not limited to our relationship with God, but also involves the restoration of our human relationships. The story of Jacob's struggle with the angel invites us to reflect on the nature of faith and spiritual struggle. This passage shows us that the journey of transformation is not an easy path, but rather a process of confrontation, acceptance of our limitations, and surrender to the divine will. Jacob, who had previously stood out for his cunning and manipulation, now finds himself facing a force that challenges his very understanding of the world. This struggle represents the journey of every human being in search of their identity, their connection to the divine, and their reconciliation with others. Jacob's hip wound becomes a lasting symbol of his transformation, forever reminding him of his struggle and his surrender. This physical mark represents the humility and vulnerability that are necessary to achieve true spiritual transformation. This passage teaches us that the journey of faith is not linear, but rather a process of ups and downs, struggles and victories. It reminds us that even in our most difficult moments, God is present, challenging us to face our own limitations and surrender to His will. The story of Jacob's struggle with the angel is a narrative deeply rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition, reverberated through the centuries and interpreted in countless ways. This biblical passage has become a powerful symbol of the human being's spiritual journey, inspiring artists, theologians, and thinkers from various eras. Through this narrative, we are invited to reflect on our own struggle with God, with our inner demons, and with the forces that challenge us on our path of faith. Jacob becomes a mirror in which we can see ourselves with all our weaknesses, fears, and aspirations. Jacob's transformation from a cunning and manipulative man to someone who surrenders to the divine will is a slow and painful process, but also profoundly transformative. This journey teaches us that true change requires from us an act of courage, humility, and surrender. As we accompany Jacob's struggle, we are reminded that faith is not an easy conquest, but a winding path full of challenges and obstacles. However, it is in this struggle that we find the possibility of a profound transformation, of a reconciliation with God and with ourselves. The blessing granted to Jacob by the divine opponent represents the reward for his perseverance and determination. This blessing reminds us that, even in our most difficult moments, God is present, ready to welcome and transform us. The change of Jacob's name to Israel symbolizes the transition from an identity based on cunning and deception to an identity founded on struggle and connection with the sacred. This transformation inspires us to seek a deeper connection with God, even if it requires us to confront our own shadows and limitations. The reconciliation between Jacob and Esau is a moment of healing and restoration, reminding us of the importance of facing and overcoming the conflicts and divisions that distance us from our loved ones. This passage teaches us that spiritual transformation is not limited to our relationship with God, but also involves the restoration of our human relationships. As we accompany Jacob's journey, we are invited to reflect on our own ability to forgive, to reconcile, and to rebuild broken bonds. This story inspires us to seek healing and reconciliation, even in the face of the greatest challenges. The story of Jacob's struggle with the angel is a timeless narrative that continues to resonate in our hearts and minds. It reminds us that the spiritual journey is a complex process, full of highs and lows, but also opportunities for transformation and growth.